My name is Michael Carter. I was born and raised in Austin, Texas, a vibrant, vibrant city where the warmth of the sun and the hospitality of the people are as characteristic as the music that plays on every corner. Austin was more than just a place to me. It was the backdrop of my life, the stage where every meaningful moment unfolded. At 38 years old, I was an ordinary man, or so I thought. I worked as an engineer at a technology company, a job that required dedication and attention to detail. My day-to-day life was filled with meetings, deadlines, and the constant pursuit of innovation. I had been married for 10 years to Emily, an extraordinary woman I met in college. Together, we built a life full of love and commitment, and we were blessed with two wonderful children, Jake and Olivia. I had always been skeptical about what happens after death. I believed in science, in what was tangible and measurable. The idea of an afterlife seemed distant and abstract, something that did not fit into my pragmatic view of the world. But in a single instant, everything changed. On September 14, 2017, my life took an unexpected turn. It was a Thursday, and the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with golden and orange hues. I was driving home after a tiring day at work, listening to an old playlist on the radio, trying to relax. Highway 290 was congested as usual, and traffic crawled slowly. I remember every detail of that moment. The sound of the car's engine, the smell of the leather seats, the feel of the steering wheel in my hands. I was lost in thought, planning dinner with Emily and the kids, when it all happened. Suddenly, I saw a huge truck approaching quickly through the intersection. Its high beams reflected off the windshield of my car, creating a blinding glare. My heart raced, and time seemed to slow down. I felt every beat in my chest like a drum echoing inside me. My instincts screamed to brake, to swerve, to do anything. But it was too late. The impact was brutal. The sound of metal twisting mixed with the deafening roar of the collision. My body was thrown violently against the seatbelt, and I felt the air escape my lungs in a sharp thud. Shards of glass flew around me like tiny, shiny blades. The pain came fast and sharp, but was soon replaced by absolute silence. Everything became a blur of flickering lights, distorted shadows, and a strange floating sensation. My body was there, but I no longer knew if I was still part of it. But the strangest thing was what happened next. Suddenly, I was no longer inside the car. I was floating above it, observing the scene with absurd clarity. It was as if I had been ripped from my own body without warning. The sensation was surreal, indescribable. I could see the scene with a clarity I had never experienced before. The lights of the sirens reflected on the fragments of glass scattered across the asphalt, flashing red and blue. Smoke rose lazily from the destroyed engine, as if time had lost its meaning. I saw my own body among the wreckage, inert, with my head slightly tilted to the side. The windshield was shattered into 1,000 pieces, like a distorted mosaic. People ran to help. Some shouted for help. Others just watched, paralyzed by the shock of the scene. I should have felt pain, terror, despair, but none of that was present. There was absolute peace, a comforting silence. No worry, no fear, just a feeling of lightness, as if all the weight of existence had been lifted. I felt free, floating in the air, like a feather carried by the wind. It was as if, for the first time, I understood what it means to exist without limitations. And then, something even more surreal happened. A tunnel of light opened up in front of me. But it wasn't just any glow. It was a living, pulsating light that seemed to breathe and envelop me at the same time. Its glow wasn't blinding. On the contrary, it brought a clarity that was impossible to describe. Golden and pearly hues intertwined like currents of energy, moving gently, as if that light had a consciousness of its own. I was pulled toward it, but not in a forced way. It was as if an invisible force was calling me with an indescribable sweetness. There was no fear, no hesitation, only the certainty that this was the path I was supposed to follow. And somehow, I knew that I already knew this place, not with my mind, but with something much deeper inside me. As I crossed the entrance of the tunnel, I was immediately enveloped by a wave of cozy warmth, but not a physical warmth. It was a feeling of absolute comfort, as if all the pain, all the anguish of my existence had simply dissolved. It was an armless embrace, a complete acceptance that made me feel, perhaps for the first time, completely whole. Then came love. But it wasn't a human love, limited or conditional. It was something much bigger, something that went through me in every direction, penetrating every part of who I was. A love so pure and absolute that it made me realize how small and fragile any definition of love we know on earth is. It was the kind of love that demands nothing, that simply exists, all-encompassing and eternal. I felt like a drop returning to the ocean, not losing my identity, but finally understanding that I had always been part of something infinitely bigger. It was a feeling of belonging, of connection to everything and everyone around me. Every moment of my life, every choice, every action, everything made sense within this immense web of love and understanding. That was when the review of my life began. It wasn't like watching a simple movie. It was something much deeper, more vivid. Each scene didn't just flash before my eyes, but I was sucked into it, reliving each moment with an intensity I had never experienced before. Time didn't exist as I knew it. Events didn't follow a linear order, but flowed like a river, taking me from one memory to the next, guided by something greater that I didn't fully understand. And the most impressive thing, I didn't just see my actions, I felt them, and not just from my own point of view, but from the perspective of all those who were affected by them. I saw myself at 8 years old, running around the schoolyard, laughing with my friends. But suddenly, the scene changed. I was standing in front of a more fragile classmate, pushing him without thinking twice. At that moment, I felt the impact of his body falling to the ground, the sharp pain in his scraped knee, but worse than that, the humiliation and sadness that washed over him as the laughter echoed around him. I had never imagined the weight of that moment, until now. The scene changed again. I was already a teenager, standing at the door of my house. My mother was sitting on the couch, her eyes filled with tears. She had just lost her job and was trying to hide the despair in her voice as she told me that everything would be okay. But at that moment, without knowing exactly why, I hugged her. I saw that hug repeating itself before me, but this time, I felt something I had never realized before. I felt the relief that simple gesture brought her, the warmth of love that enveloped her heart, even in the midst of uncertainty. The scenes continued, passing without pause. Some were moments that I remembered clearly, others were fragments that I would never have considered important. But each one carried a weight, an effect that I had never fully understood. Little words spoken in the heat of the moment, looks of contempt or compassion, insignificant gestures that changed someone's day, or even their life. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was forgotten. Everything I had ever done, every word that came out of my mouth, every thought that led to an action, every act of kindness or cruelty. It was all there, unfolding before me, not to punish me, but to teach me. And for the first time, I understood the true weight of my existence. Then I realized I wasn't alone. A presence approached. At first it was just a silhouette in the light, but as it got closer, its shape became clearer. It was my grandfather, who had died when I was 6 years old. My memories of him were vague, blurred by time, but now, standing there in front of me, he seemed more real than ever. His eyes shone with infinite wisdom, and a gentle smile lit up his face. There was no need for words, because what he wanted to tell me simply reached me, like a voiceless thought, straight to my soul. "It's not your time yet." It was like a whisper inside me, but at the same time an absolute truth. My entire being absorbed that message, and for a moment I felt a mixture of confusion and resistance. How could I go back, after feeling this peace, this love? I tried to argue. I tried to hold on to that place with all my strength. But before I could react, another voice echoed around me. Different from my grandfather's. It was deep, immense, as if it came from all directions at once. It was a voice that could not only be heard, but felt. "Have you fulfilled your mission?" The words reverberated within me, carrying a weight that I could not ignore. Mission? I had never thought of that before. My mind began to run through every moment of my existence. Had I really lived as I should have? Had I done everything that was expected of me? The silence that followed was deafening. I had no answer. And in that moment I understood that the decision was not mine. It was at that moment that I realized what I had to do. All the peace I felt in that place was indescribable, but something inside me began to pulse with an unexpected force. A thought came to me like a breath. I can't leave my family. I saw the face of Emily, my wife, waiting for me every night after work. I saw the innocent eyes of Jake and Olivia, my children, full of life and curiosity. I saw all the promises I had yet to fulfill, the moments I had yet to live. I realized that there was so much to do, so much love to give, so many words I had never said. I had a choice, and I chose to go back. The exact moment that this decision was made, I felt as if I was being sucked by a gigantic force. The light around me began to dissipate, as if it were moving away from me, or perhaps I was moving away from it. The peace slowly dissolved, giving way to a different feeling. Dense, heavy, suffocating. Suddenly I was hit by a wave of pain. My senses came back with a brutal impact. The heat of blood running down my face, the smell of smoke and gasoline burning my nostrils, the distant sound of voices, sirens, hurried footsteps. My chest rose and fell. My lungs burned as if they were made of fire. My body was broken, but alive. "He's fighting back! We have a pulse!" A paramedic's voice cut through the chaos around me. I felt hands holding me, pulling me from the wreckage, lights flashing above me. I wanted to speak, wanted to tell him I was there, that I was back, but my mouth wouldn't respond. Only tears streamed from the corners of my eyes. I was rushed to the hospital. I underwent surgeries, months of recovery. My body slowly healed, but something inside me was never the same again. Before the accident, I lived for work, for my responsibilities, for what I thought was important. Then I realized that life was much more than that. Every moment, every person, every gesture had a weight I had never considered. That experience changed my life in a way that words could never fully describe. Something inside me was transformed forever. I began to see people differently, as if a blindfold had been removed from my eyes. Every small act, every smile, every word, everything has a much greater impact than we imagine. Before, I would go through my days without thinking about it, stuck in the routine, believing that my actions were insignificant. But now, I knew. Every act of kindness could brighten a dark day. Every word of encouragement could change a life. And every silence in the face of someone's pain could be as powerful as a scream. My wife and my children, I used to love them, but I didn't always show it. Now, I don't let a single day go by without telling Emily and the children how much I love them, without looking them in the eye and being there for them. Not just physically, but emotionally. I try to help the people around me, even in small ways. A hug, a listening ear, an act of compassion. Because I know that in the end, it's these little things that really matter. And most of all, I've learned that death is not the end. It's just the beginning of a new journey. If this story touched you in any way, remember to share and like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Maybe someone you know needs to hear this message. And remember, every choice we make has consequences that go far beyond what we can see.